Hello and welcome to All That Jazz. I'm Viviam Maria Lopez. Who does Mick Jagger, Willie Nelson, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin, and Gregg Allman all have in common? The answer is my guest today. In his early 20s, he joined the legendary jazz trumpeter and composer Miles Davis. Today, he's an award-nominated composer and performer known by his peers as the 21st century Renaissance man. My guest today is world-class saxophonist and producer Bill Evans. Welcome, Bill.
Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you. So, how did you get interested in jazz and how old were you?
I was very young. My father was very interested in jazz, and he always used to play big band records at home, like Woody Shaw, Woody Herman, Stan Kenton, and all that. So when I was very young, I heard this music. And then when I was about 6 or 7, my parents bought a grand piano, and I have a brother and 2 sisters, and we got home from school, and there was a piano. And they thought if any of our kids play it, well, it's up to them. And I gravitated toward the piano right away.
And I understand your father is a classical musical prodigy.
He was. He won all these classical piano contests when he was like 7, 8, 9, 10. But then he got interested in sports and all the different things that little kids did. And he ended up letting it go after he was 12 years old. But he was exceptional. But he was the one that influenced me. And then my aunt had all these different jazz records at her house, and she didn't live far from us, outside of Chicago in Clarendon Hills. And so I got to hear Herb Ellis and Stan Getz and Jerry Mulligan and all these different kinds of music. But I wanted to be a piano player because I started piano at 6 or 7, classical. But then I started thinking more about jazz, and I went to see the local jazz band at the high school, and I saw one of the saxophone players get up and play a solo, and I looked at my mom, and I was like 9 years old. I said, I want to do that. Yes. That's just too cool. She said, but you're a piano player. I said, yeah, but I want to do that too then. So anyway, that's how, to make a long story short, that's kind of how it got started. And I just fell into it and never left it, really, you know.
And you started playing professionally at what age?
When did they first start paying me at a gig? I was probably 15, 16. But I actually started on piano, backing up singers. I'd bring my Fender Rhodes around, we'd play Holiday Inns and stuff around the Chicago area. And I'd play piano. And occasionally I'd take out my saxophone, but you know. At that time, when I was 15, 16, is when I was really into playing and learning saxophone. So everything was sort of evolving to just be around the saxophone. Actually, that started at 13, 14, but yeah, it was sort of evolving fast.
Good. But then at 22, you joined the legendary Miles Davis. I know that it was a comeback band. Was that correct?
It was. Miles had taken a hiatus from music in 1975. So I'm still in high school. So when I'm in high school, I just want to learn how to play saxophone as best I can. I'm just really into it. I'm interested, you know, I did sports. I did everything everybody else did at that time. Guys my age, but I was really into the saxophone. It was just something I always did. I wanted to get better and better at it. I'd go to the Jamie Aebersold clinics and summer camps, and I'd do things to try to get better, take lessons with as many people as I could. And then I wanted to be around New York, so I went to school at William Patterson College in New York, and that was around the city. And you just start meeting people. You know, I met Dave Liebman. Miles calls Dave Liebman and says, I'd like a young saxophone player. Dave recommends me. I get the opportunity to play for Miles. And it sort of evolves from there. You know, but I was just totally saturated in the music scene by that point. That's all I wanted to do.
No, I can imagine. Now, talking back about Miles, it was true that you helped him put him back the band together? Yeah,
the way it worked was Miles wanted to get back into playing again. So he puts the word out. Dave recommends me. Miles had already been in touch with Miles's nephew, Vince Wilburn, who ended up joining his band later on after I'd left the band. But they had sort of had a little bit of a musical get-together in the studio, and Miles wants to play again. They started recording a little bit. It was for the Man with the Horn record we started doing. But then Miles says, we're going to have to tour, and we need to get the musicians together for that. And he said, well, I want to play with Al Foster, but we need other guys. And this is right after the first few months I'd met him. We're together all the time, every day. We're talking music, and I'm sort of his liaison to the musicians kind of thing. So I recommended Marcus Miller. He had never heard Marcus, and obviously he's going to love Marcus Miller, and he's perfect. He's such a great musician and personality, and perfect for the time. And we're the same age, and I'd known him from his playing around New York at the time. And Miles knew Barry Finnerty from playing in 1975 or so on something. And Miles wanted somebody different, and so I got Mike Stern and John Schofield, make a long story short. Just because I was with him every day and he trusted my judgment. And he said, as soon as I don't like who you're recommending, I'll stop asking. But anyway, that worked out fine. So that period was a very interesting period for me, as far as like going from school to this other thing, which really sort of, it sort of puts you on the map, and gives you the opportunity to. But it was very influential to me as far as like.
And memories of Miles, per se.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I knew him on a different level than most people because we were friends. I got to know him musically from the beginning, but then we became friends. And not everybody is going to become a good friend, A lot of personalities that people would have in his band, Miles wouldn't become real good friends with them. It was it became that we were really good friends. We just got along, our sense of humor was the same, and we got to know each other on that level at that time for the situation. And it was really cool, it's something I'll never forget. I actually want to write a book and talk a little bit about that.
Oh,
because I think
great.
because it'll talk about my observations of what it was like in my situation, being around him all the time and his creative thing. In times when I'd sit at the piano and he'd sit next to me and I'd sit and mess around and he'd sit and mess around, and he'd say, play this again, play that again. I'd start to create something else and he'd look at me and he'd say, I used to do that with the other Bill Evans. I'm like, whoa. But
that's pretty cool.
It was just great memories from, what a way to start.
Incredible, yes.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
I'm happy that you enjoyed it. Well, friends, and it's time for us to take our first break. When we return, Bill Evans is going to tell us how he went from jazz to rock to country music right after this, so stay tuned.
Miami-Dade College has career paths in anything you want to be. What's your story? Be global. Be cutting edge. Be inventive. Be investigative. Be a hero. What do you want to be? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
And welcome back to All That Jazz. Joining me today is saxophonist Bill Evans. So after Miles, you play with other musicians such as Herbie Hancock, Mick Jagger, Willie Nelson. The list is long. How is it for you to transition from, say, as we were saying, jazz to rock to country?
Well, I love all kinds of music, and being with Miles at such a young age, it throws you out into the international scene right away, and you get the opportunity to play with a lot of different people. And that was what was really, really cool about that. And liking all kinds of music, coming from Miles, enabled me to start writing all different kinds of music. And, and you realize how small the musical world really is, because Miles's manager was Willie Nelson's manager. So Willie would come to Miles' gigs, and then eventually I would sit in with Miles, or with Willie, which was a lot of fun. And I got to know the guys in the band. And playing the saxophone, and knowing jazz, you can play pretty much with anybody because you just sort of react to whatever music you're playing with. And if you like it, which I truly do, it's really interesting. And I think it's interesting for the listeners. So that saxophone doesn't change. The music changes. So I had the opportunity of doing a tour with Herbie Hancock, with the Headhunters. And I've always loved Herbie. I've always loved his music. He's a genius, And so playing that kind of music was really great. And playing with John McLaughlin for a few years after Miles's band was really great, because that's another different thing to play, really challenging. John's an amazing musician, and we became good friends, and we're still good friends, and still keep in touch, you know. And so, but being established by Miles gave me the opportunity. But you still have to be able to play. So, I mean, even though it gives you the opportunity, he's not going to, you know, you have to be the one that still has to play. So, you know, and the thing about jazz is you're constantly pushing to get better and better and better. And I'm still in the same head that I was back when I was 15. I'm trying to get better and better and better. It's just that I have a very short attention span. So for me, that's one of the reasons why the music would always change. It would be really fun for me to do a different kind of music, you know. When I did, in the 90s, I was touring Europe mostly, 4 or 5 months a year with a band called Push, and I had rappers and singers, and it became this big, huge fusion of hip hop and jazz that at the time, in the early 90s, no one was really doing, but I'd heard it in my head as something that would be really fun. And that started to blow up into a whole new thing, which was really fun, you know. And then after that, I started to lose my attention span on that, and which became short. And then I started to get into this acoustic groove thing, which was sort of groove, but more acoustic. And I did records like Starfish in the Moon, Soul Insider. I did some live in Tokyo CDs with great bands with Dennis Chambers and Victor Bailey. And so it evolves from one to the next. And then from there, I've always loved the banjo, the violin, dobro, mandolin. I love these instruments. Did I know much about the music that those instruments came from? No. But I just love the sound of them. And I knew they always, to me in my head, sounded great with a saxophone. So I started writing music for that.
That is beautiful.
And so, but Miles gave me the confidence to believe in myself. And he always said, whatever music you hear in your head, go with it. Because that's really going to be you. Be true to yourself. He always told me that from the very beginning. And when I did my first record called Living in the Crest of a Wave in 1984, Miles did some artwork that we did on the cover and all that. And he said, I never worried about the guys in my band. He said, you and Wayne and Herbie. And I went, whoa. He said, because you guys, you know what you want to do. You can play, and you'll stick to what you believe in. It's almost like a curse, because it doesn't make it easier. There are easier roads.
Right.
But I have no choice, you know. You only do what you can do, what you're inspired to do.
Yes.
You can't say, I'm going to do this kind of music. I only do the music that inspires me. I get these ideas, and then they start growing in my head, and then I have to do them, you know?
You're constantly reinventing yourself. Again, like you said, you have your instrument, but again, you continue evolving with times and inspirations.
And then a lot of times, it's in a certain way. It's almost starting over to a certain degree. Your audience knows you, but you're giving them a different kind of music that they have to get accustomed to. But you know, I mostly tour in Europe, and the audiences there know. And so they'll say, oh, I like this phase, I like this record, I like this record, I like this record. And it was really a change when you did this record, and we really like this. And, you know, you keep it interesting for the audience as well. You're not just relying on your laurels, you know.
Correct.
And, you know, life is short. We're not on the 200-year plan, you know. So it's like, you know, I just want to have fun, you know.
Definitely.
Doing the stuff like that.
And I know, well, you know, accompanying so many different musicians, but at the same time, back in the 1990 or so, is it when you started touring with your own band? Yeah. And how was it to be the band leader at that time?
It's a trip, because when you first start doing it, you can't believe that people are actually really responding to the music that you wrote. You can't believe that. You know, you put out your own record, and then you're selling them at the concerts, and people are cheering, and the band, you know, there's this whole thing that's happening with the music that you wrote by yourself in your room. It's a trip when you first feel that. It's really a rush, and it becomes addictive. You know, it's like something that you really that's the period when you really start evolving, because your music evolves, your playing evolves, your audience evolves, and it becomes something that's like you feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to do. It's really an honor to be able to do that.
I know you've played with countless of musicians, and you've have over 25 solo albums. How
Are
do
you
you
kidding?
find time?
Whoa, no.
How do you find time to be back in the studio and continue?
Well, the studio is like, you know, you have to put time aside. I can't just write tunes all year and then go in the studio. I have to like figure out a time, like a 6-week period, maybe even 2 months, if I can, to write it, go in and record it, and then it comes out. And in the 90s and 2000s, it was more like, up until like maybe 2011, 12, was something where I could do that. The record company would put it out, and now we do records ourselves. I mean, it just makes more sense, because it's a different world now. Everything is online, everything is streamed. You sell your CDs at the gigs.
Yes.
And so it's, you know, and the CDs are evolving to, there won't be CDs. I mean, how many people have CD players, you know? But I tell people that these things are actually very good coasters for beer mugs, coffee cups, and they actually play music if you take the disc out. But you know, there's still a lot of people that still want to have the CD.
I was going to say that no matter what, the jazz lover and those who follow
Yeah.
you might download some music, but for the most part, they enjoy looking at the CD,
Yeah.
listening to it, playing
That's
it,
true.
and reading the credits and everything.
There's
I
still a lot of
didn't
people
know
that like that, especially in different other parts of the world. So we still do that. But you know, as a musician, you keep evolving. You have to keep your music growing, which means you have to record it. So you have to keep doing CDs. It's part of who you are. You know, so I keep doing that so that all the CDs sort of tell a story about who I am. Each one is like the next phase of where I'm at. And it's not like one is better than the next, because whichever one I'm doing, that's the most important thing to me at that time.
Yes.
And when that evolves, the next one is the most important thing. I can't just put out a CD like, oh, I got to do this. I put it out because it means so much for me at the time that I have to do it. You know, it's crazy.
And
But
in
it's-
fact, two of your CDs have been nominated for Grammy for the Soul Insider and Soulgrass. How did you feel having that nomination from such a prestigious award?
Well, you know, it's not a sporting event. To me, music's not a sporting event. And when I did those particular CDs, I thought that they were probably going to be, as far as I was concerned, obscure, because I wasn't doing something that I thought would be commercially viable. And then, as it turns out, Soulgrass sold a lot, and then someone had nominated it. And it feels good just to get honored for anything.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But I don't concentrate on that. And a lot of my CDs, I never even put them in to get nominated. I didn't even, you know, what am I trying to say? I didn't say, you know, they have to be admitted
Right.
at a certain time and everything. And at one point, I was just against the theory, so I didn't even admit them. And people thought, "Are you crazy? You have everybody on the CD. This is a great CD. You might even have won it that year." I'm like, won it? To do the record and play with such great musicians and be able to sell it and offer it to people, that to me is success.
Totally.
So, you know,
Definitely,
whatever.
not a doubt about that. Well, and friends, we're going to come back with more Bill Evans right after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
Miami-Dade College has career paths in anything you want to be. What's your story? Be global. Be cutting edge. Be inventive. Be investigative. Be a hero. What do you want to be? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
And thank you for joining us again in All That Jazz. My guest today is saxophonist, composer, and producer Bill Evans. Bill, you just returned from playing in cities like Scotland and Germany, and I know you've toured also in Japan and Russia, Australia. Is there any particular city or country that you feel jazz is more popular?
You know, there's jazz fans all over the world. That's a good question, but I feel like all the different countries, for instance, in the summertime, we're in most of the countries in Europe, and in April I was in Japan. And if the band is playing really well, which most of the, I mean, I'm fortunate to play with some great musicians, so they usually are, the audiences respond everywhere. You don't go one place and they don't respond. I mean, in the last 5-6 years, I did 2 cultural department tours of Russia.
Yes.
And these people had never, ever heard of us, and I brought my Soulgrass band, and never heard the music. So, and every crowd was about 2,500 seats, beautiful halls all over Russia. The people are amazing over there. And by the end of the show, they're all standing up, they're all cheering, they're all into it. Music just reaches people no matter where you're at. It crosses all boundaries. You know, it really does. Because you could be in a small town in Italy, or a small town in Spain, or you could be, I mean, there's a million places you could be. And when the band hits and you make a connection, and they can tell that you're having a good time on stage and that the music is serious, they're going to react. And they're going to get into it. And they're going to thank you for coming. And it's the best, you know? So it's like, you know, we've been in places in Spain this year where they start singing the national anthem after the thing for an encore, you know? They do the same thing in Italy, too.
Beautiful.
You know, I guess Spain and Italy and certain places are really vocal You know, the ones that are like, yeah, you know, and we love that. You know, there's nothing, it's a cool
Well,
thing.
music is, as we know, and it's not a cliche, it is the universal language without a doubt.
Right.
So even if you were to speak to them not in their language, but the musically wise, there's that connection without a doubt that you have experienced. And in fact, you've played for these large audiences, but today you played for students and for the community and perhaps a smaller venue. Do you see difference between both of them?
You know, I'm just as inspired. It doesn't matter if there's 50 people or 5,000 people, I'm just as inspired. Like today, the musicians are great on stage. Mike DeLito put in a great band. Appreciate him bringing me down here to be able to do this. And so we love what we do. So, I mean, if we decided to get together and play with just us and no audience, we'd have a great time. You know, we love playing in front of people. We love the rapport, but we love what we do. So it's not a job. You know, what I always tell people is we get paid to travel. The music is for free, you know, but...
I love that. And the fact that you were here with many of the students, what advice would you give someone, like a student or someone who's starting in the music business?
Well, what I always say is it's keep the vision of where you want to be. Keep the focus on that and not what could stop you along the way. You know, I always did that when I was young. I sort of focused on the final result all the time. I still do. Like I have a new band now, so I'm seeing where I want that band to be. And I just keep concentrating on that until that vision is a reality. I've been doing that since I was 10 years old. I wasn't taught that. It's just something you know, when I started playing saxophone, I thought, okay, I want to be at a certain level. I want to be with a certain band. And I just keep working toward that vision, you know. But you have to keep really concentrating hard because there's a lot of great players out there, you know, and you have to be very serious about staying in it and getting as good as you can on your instrument, you know. But if it's what you love to do, it's what you love to do, you know. I mean, if someone is thinking that they want something to fall back on, and if they've asked the question of like, well, should I get a business degree in case the music doesn't work out? I always tell them yes, because if you have to ask the question, you're not going to make it as far as like full time. And that question was asked to Joe Henderson once from somebody when I was at the Jamie Abersol camps when I was a kid. A woman said, something's really been bothering me, and I was wondering if I should get a business degree. And he said, absolutely. She goes, really? I'm surprised you're a jazz musician. He said, unless it's 110% in your blood. And he looked at me, he said, have you ever thought about doing anything else? I said, no, that's what I do. He said, that's the way it kind of has to be. Really. It's because it's demanding, it's challenging, and it will test you every step of the way. You never feel like you've made it. Correct. You know, it's always a work in progress, which keeps it interesting.
Of course. A moment when you feel that maybe it's time to retire, you know?
No, it'll keep you on your toes all the time.
Busy.
There'll be tours where it'll be, you do 33 dates, it's successful, everything is great, wow, this is really tremendous. And then there'll be another tour, it's like, well, we haven't filled in this section you're gonna lose money on, we're not sure about this. Uh-oh, this guy is not gonna be able to make the last, oh God, do we cancel the tour, I mean, it's the reality of the business, you know?
Correct. So
and then it'll come together and it'll work, but
yes.
No, it's frustrating, but it's great at the same time, you know? I mean, this last tour I did with the Spy Killers band, which is my latest group.
Yes, I wanted to talk to you about that. I know you're promoting that.
And I just segued right into it. It's a great drummer, Wolfgang Hoffmann, who's played with everybody in the world. He lives in Germany. More people know him in Europe, but he's a world-class musician. And a young keyboard player named Simon Oslander, he's 21, phenomenal. And Gary Granger, who is a bass player, lives in Baltimore, played with John Scofield's band. But anyway, we'd go out and play, and it would be no sleep and everything, but every night people really responded to the band, and everybody said, you guys were having such fun on stage. We have a ball. I said, you guys are smiling, you're having a great time. So regardless of the fact that we might get 2 hours of sleep, 3 flights, a 4-hour drive, we go out and see a venue that might have 600 people, and they're all, we're like, you know, 2 espressos, let's go. And I started singing, so I play piano and I'll sing a few tunes every night. And that's also a challenge and a lot of fun. So, I mean, in general, you know, it's a good life. You know, it's just the travel is hard. It's always, you know, and to come here, I thought, you know, it's going to be easy because I can go to a local airport and fly. And then there's a 6-hour delay, so it's back on the road. But it
was all worth it, right?
Of course,
Everyone
absolutely, because you're here, you're playing, you're meeting new
Yes.
people. It's always worth it. So it's, you know, but the road is the road. It's not, it's, you know, being tired is part of the biz.
I know.
It's not a new feeling.
And we were talking also, we have the Live Down Under that you did in Australia, and then also the other project, the summer when Robin Ford, a great collaboration with Robin.
Yeah, that was a great collaboration. We did a record that with Keith Carlock, phenomenal drummer, plays with Steely Dan and played with Sting and John Mayer and a bunch of guys, phenomenal drummer. And James Genius, who plays with Herbie Hancock, and we played together. He was on my Soul Insider record, as a matter of fact. But anyway, we recorded a record last February in Nashville. And we're doing another record in 3 weeks in Nashville with myself, Daryl Jones on bass, Keith Carlock and Robin. And that's going to come out in April when I take that band to Japan. So I'm in heavy writing mode now to record another one. And it's just a really interesting thing because me and Robin had both played with Miles at different times. So we're going to call this one Blues, Miles, and Beyond. So we might record a couple Miles tunes and do our own version of it. But it's interesting because Robin's a great singer. I'll sing a tune, and he's got a different blues angle, but jazz. And it's really cool. So when you put that together with like Daryl Jones and Keith, who I've toured with those two guys before together, it's a really cool combination. You know, you want to be able to give those guys enough to play on, but also give them not too much so they can do their thing. But that's like the ultimate rhythm section. It's really cool.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for letting us know what's going on and what's happening. So we'll be keeping up with your music. Congratulations for all the great successes. Thank you for taking the time to be with us and
It's a pleasure to be
viewers,
here.
Really.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'll be here next time when the channel is doing Volume 2.
Yes, looking forward to that. Thank you again, Bill.
Thank you.
And friends, this is all for today for this edition of All That Jazz. Until next time when we bring you all that is jazz. Until then, I'm Viviam María López. Hope you have a great jazzy day.
Bye.